Our next speaker, Barry Moltz, has founded and run small businesses with a great deal of success and failure for more than 20 years. He now gets small businesses unstuck. He is the author of 5 best-selling small business books, including his latest one called How to Get Unstuck, 25 Ways to Get Your Business Growing Again. Barry's a nationally recognized speaker on small business, has given hundreds of presentations to audiences ranging from the size of 20 to 20,000. As a member of the Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame, he has appeared on many TV and radio programs and is a frequent guest at MSNBC's Your Business, CNBC's The Big Idea with Donnie Deutsch, and NPR. Barry hosts his own business radio talk show on AM 560, The Answer. He is a weekly contributor to the American Express Open Forum and to Forbes, a guy you want to know. Maybe I'll date you next, after Brenda. Okay, please welcome Barry Moltz.
Isn't Julie great? Give her a round of applause. It's a thankless job. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I've had 3 businesses over the last 20 years. The first business went out of business. The second business, I was kicked out by my 2 partners about 2 weeks before my first son was born. And the third business, I actually started 2 weeks after my first son was born. Fortunately, in July of 1999, I was able to sell that business. I was able to pay back the bank the $1.3 million I owed them. And my wife tells me I got her back just about the same time. I didn't always think my life would turn out this way. When I was growing up, my mother told me, in fact, my mother promised me that in my career, every year I'd get promoted, every year I'd make more money. Who here still has that same fantasy? Raise your hand. Well, my life turned out to be, which is probably like yours, a series of ups and downs, a series of good times and bad times. And that's the first skill you need if you're going to be successful in small business, and that's the skill of resiliency. How do we celebrate the good times, but how do we transition through some more of the difficult times? Now, as a small business guy, lots of folks come up to me and they say, Barry, I want to start my own business because I want to make a boatload of money. I tell them, if you want to make some money next couple of years, you better find yourself a job. Because the only reason you should go out there and start and run your own business is because of passion. Because deep down inside, you want to see your ideas succeed, and you won't let your ideas fail. Now, let's face it, the number one reason why most people get started in their own business in America is because they hate their boss. Who here actually hates your boss? Raise your hand. Don't raise your hand if your boss is here. It's probably not a good career move. All right, who knows someone that hates their boss? All right, there we go. I actually left IBM in 1990 because I hated my boss. I won't tell you his name. It's not really important. We can just call him George. We can call him George Durot, D-U-R-O-T. You see, George used to have sales contests where first prize was lunch with him. I always said, George, what's second prize? 2 lunches with you? But actually, when you have your own business, you actually have more bosses, right? Your vendors become your boss, your customers become your boss, your employees become your boss, and pretty soon, what it feels like is you're in this tiny little car, which is your business. All those bosses are crowded in there with you. You take this thing on a winding mountain road, which is the market. You keep banging in the guardrail, you keep hitting the guard posts, and what's worse, your spouse is actually in that car with you, except they're in the back seat, turned around and blindfolded. If you can't see where you're going, they have absolutely no idea where you're going. Now, when I was growing up, my mother always had these motivational sayings that were supposed to make me feel better when I was down. Raise your hand if you've heard any of these, all right? Do what you love and the money will follow. Good things come to those who wait. Failure is not an option. My mother said if I became really rich, people would think I was wise. People would think I was handsome. People say, you know, you can sing. And that's what it seemed like the first 10 years at IBM, where every year I got promoted, every year I made more money. It was here I learned there's really 3 archetypes to success, 3 paths to financial success. The first one is what I call something from nothing. You know the drill. You have an idea. You work really, really hard. You get a bunch of other people in with you. And over a number of years, you achieve great financial success. It's the entrepreneur's dream. Path number 2 is what I call the great comeback. You have some miserable failure, but during that failure, you get some keen insight that propels you to great success. And path number 3 is what I call the rich get richer. It's the punchline. The old joke is, how do you make $100 million? You start with $50 million, right? Or maybe you start with $200 million. Has anybody here ever watched a TED Talk? Yeah, I was watching this TED Talk the other day, and this billionaire was talking about how he made all his money. And he said that when he was a little boy, he used to go to the market with his grandfather, who he loved dearly, and he used to buy an apple for 5 cents. And then he used to bring the apple home and polish it really nice and shiny so it was just beautiful, brought it back to the market the next day and sold it for 10 cents. He saw how much profit he had made. This time he bought 2 apples, brought them home and polished them really nice and shiny, brought them back to the market and sold them each for 10 cents. He did this several more times, and his grandfather died and left him over $1 billion. That's the rich get richer, right? And we love these stories because sometimes they're even true. Something from nothing. Bill Gates, Michael Dell, comeback kid, J.K. Rowling. Remember, she was on welfare. She was writing the Harry Potter. And of course, who is the poster child for the rich get richer in this country? Just shout it out. Who's the poster child? Forbes. Not Forbes. Who's the poster child? Big buildings, big names on them. Donald Trump, right? He made his He made his money from his father, Fred Trump. When I was flying over from Chicago yesterday, I was reading in the American Airlines Trade magazine, there was an article that said, How to Get Rich by Ivanka Trump. And they said, like, have Donald as your father, right? And again, all these people go out and they write these books, right? 7-Step Success, 10-Step Success. Who here has ever read The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra? Oh, Deepak's going to be pissed. All right, what about The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey? May he rest in peace. What about The 7 Highs of Effective Habits written by Lindsay Lohan and Charlie Sheen? I'm only kidding. I actually don't believe there are 7 steps to success. However, I do believe there are 2 things that all financially successful people have in common. The first one is luck, and the second one is timing. Has anybody ever asked you, would you rather be lucky or would you rather be good? How do you answer? I'd rather be lucky, right? Because I'm lucky, it seems like I'm good. Have you ever known someone who's kind of stupid and jerky and made a boatload of money? Doesn't it just piss you off? That used to get me really angry until I heard a quote from Jean Cocteau. He's this French dramatist. He used to say, we must believe in luck, for how else can we explain the success of those we don't like? I don't want to pretend that financial success is all about luck and timing. Certainly you have to work hard, certainly you have to spread your risk, but sometimes we don't get to that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow unless we got a little bit of luck. All right, so if I'm not going to talk about the 7 steps to success, where do you actually start? You actually start by honoring your failures. I left IBM in 1990 after about a 9-year career. And I remember the day I left, my mentor at the time was a guy named Tom Leaptag. And I remember the day I left, Tom stood there and he said, you know, Barry, you're a pretty good business person, but you'll be a better business person when you failed. You've had way too much success here at IBM. Every year you got promoted, every year you made more money. I thought Tom was just jealous. Here I was leaving IBM. I was going to make double in my new job. In fact, I was going to have my own office, a teak wood furniture desk, a dark high-back green leather chair. I was going to have my own assistant. I remember her name was Denise. I was excited because I didn't realize that Tom was foretelling my future over the next 5 years as I was fired from that company a year later. As I said before, I went out of business in my first adventure, and I was kicked out of business in my second adventure. It was here I learned a very important lesson. It was here I learned that I could fail too. This was the first time I ever deviated. My mother told me that every year I get promoted, every year I make more money. It was here I said, if I'm ever going to write a book about my business life, the title of that book would be, The Worst They Can Do Is Eat You, Surviving Your Business During Hard Times. And I eventually sold that book a couple years later to Dearborn Trade Press, and the publisher, her name was Cynthia. She brought me into her office and she closed the door. And you know what that means. I'm in trouble, right? She said, Barry, we love this book. It's not like any other business book out there except we're uncomfortable with one thing. I said, what's that one thing? She said, we're really uncomfortable with the title, The Worst They Can Do Is Eat You. And I said, what's wrong with the title? She said, well, she starts to whisper. She goes, well, the title, The Worst They Can Do Is Eat You, kind of sounds pornographic to us. So I thought for a second, I said, Cynthia, if it was meant to be pornographic, the title of the book would have been, The Best They Can Do Is Eat Me. She didn't laugh, believe me. This title actually comes from my best friend. He's a personal injury attorney right here in Des Moines. His name is Zane Smith, zanesmith.com. He always likes me to mention his name in case anybody hurts themselves, Angela, on the way out. He always just said to me, Barry, remember, the worst they can do is eat you, and that's illegal. I don't know, that made me feel better. Knowing they could cook me, knowing they could stew me, knowing they could put a fork in me and pronounce me done, I always felt, as a small business owner, the next day I'd get another chance. But you see, this idea of letting go of failure is very strange in American business because we're taught whenever we fail, there's always something to learn, right? That you can't leave this place of failure to figure out why failure happened to us and what there is to learn. Let me tell you a secret. After being in business for over 30 years, sometimes when we fail, it just sucks. There's absolutely nothing to learn. For example, in my last company, when my largest customer was indicted by the government, what was I to learn? Not to do business with criminals. When my best employee left because her husband got a job in another state, what was I to learn? Not to do business, not to hire married people. You see, the toughest part about failure is the shame that we feel. We feel we should be in another place. In order to be successful in business, you actually only need to do one thing, just one thing, and that's to let go. There are these two monks. They're walking through the forest, and they come across this beautiful bride, but she's crying by the river, and they ask her what's wrong. She says that her wedding's on the other side of the river, and she can't cross it because she's afraid she's going to ruin her wedding dress. The two monks, they look at each other. They're not really sure what to do, you see, because they are forbidden by their religious vows to touch women. However, the first monk, he doesn't hesitate. He scoops up the woman, he carries her across the river, puts her on the other side. The second monk, seeing what the first monk has done, races across the river, screaming at the first monk, saying, "How could you have touched that woman? How could you have broken all of our monthly vows?" They're walking back to the monastery that night, and the first monk, he's enjoying the bright sunshine on his face and the cool breeze in his hair. But the second monk keeps berating the first monk, saying, "How could you have touched that woman?" They get back to the monastery that night, and all the monks are together having a very peaceful dinner. Not a lot of conversation around the table at dinner time in the monastery. It's kind of like my house with my teenage sons, right? No one's really saying much when we sit down to dinner, except the second monk. He keeps laying into the first monk, saying, "How could you have touched that woman?" The first monk says, "What woman?" The second monk said, "That woman that you carried across the river." The first monk says, "I only carried her across the river, but you carried her all the way back to the monastery." Shake your head if you understand. Shake your head if you don't understand. People think you're stupid. This ball represents your last business result. When it's a success, you want to show everyone what you've achieved, right? You're so proud of it. When it's a failure, you also want to hold it tight because you're ashamed. You want to hide it. In order to be successful in business, you have to take your last business result, success or failure, learn what you can, let go and bounce. When you learn what you can, let go and bounce, you give yourself another chance at success. Success all starts with taking action. So I want to see how good this group is actually at taking action. Who here would like a copy of my new book, How to Get Unstuck? Who would like a copy of this book? Did I mention that there's actually a $5 bill inside this book? Now, who would like a copy of this book? Who would like a copy of this book? Who would like a copy of this book? Andy, no cheating. Who would like a copy of this book? All right. What is your name? Judy. Judy, what did Judy do that no one else did? She got up and she took action. Judy, thank you. Give her a round of applause. And thank you for having me. We got a great show. Julie, you're up.